Welcome back, Bears fans, to another episode of the Chicago Audible. I'm your host, Will DeWitt, and this is our Week 14 Bears-Cowboys preview show. Of course, I have my co-host, Nicholas Moriano, right alongside me, well, a few hundred miles away, but you know what I mean. The two of us were ready to break down everything you need to know before this week's Thursday night matchup against the Dallas Cowboys. And Nick, the Vikings did exactly what we needed them to do last night, and they lost to Seattle, which helps the Bears in those very slim, but still very much real playoff chances. So everything's kind of, doing what we need to do, and we can still have hope for another week, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that you said everything's going the way that we needed to. Olin Kreutz tweeted out a funny tweet yesterday, just dominoes falling. And I just thought it was the funniest thing, man. I replied to him like, hey, this is a great tweet. And then he replied, but they're all kind of falling into place, Will. And the Bears, now they just need to take care of business.
Yeah, absolutely. A big game. Well, it's pretty much playoff mode from this point forward for the Bears. If they need to win out in order to give themselves a chance to make the postseason, and a big game here against the Cowboys. So let's go ahead and get started. And we'll begin this week's preview by discussing the Chicago Bears offense that's coming off one of its most productive games of the season. And let's start on the ground and with the Bears rushing attack, since we usually kind of shy away from it. Chicago was able to put up 88 total rushing yards as a team against Detroit, which, as we mentioned, they're doing a good job at stopping the run, Detroit was, over the last month, but the Bears found a way to get it done. And perhaps more importantly, David Montgomery had 75 of those yards, and he averaged almost 5 yards per carry, as it was one of the more productive games for him this season. Now, looking at Dallas, they rank in the middle of the pack. They allow about 106 yards per game on the ground and 4.1 yards per rush. Now, Nick, I don't know about you, but I get a little bit excited when I see with the Cowboys, and they've allowed 100-plus rushing yards in 8 of their last 9 games, and the only team that wasn't able to reach 100 was the Jets, who have the worst rushing attack in all football right now. So what should we expect from the Bears on the ground this week? Can we actually say they can have back-to-back decent performances?
I think we can because we weren't really expecting a good performance against Detroit given their run defense and how it was faring this season. But this Dallas team is just not the same one that started off this season, now 6-6, just like the Bears. And that defense isn't as dominant. And I think what the Bears should do and what worked for the Bills just last week or last Thursday on Thanksgiving was when they pulled their offensive linemen and got them out in space to kind of block some of these Cowboys linebackers. That boded well for the Buffalo Bills. So I think that is a strength, somewhat of a strength for the Bears and their offensive linemen because they're still trying to find their way and start trying to stack games together. But I think if the Bears can do that, kind of get their linemen out in space, that's going to create opportunities for David Montgomery and Tariq Cohen and see if they can build off another good rushing performance in back-to-back weeks.
And it's very important for the Bears to establish a run, and really for many reasons, and we'll get to that soon, but Dallas, they're very good against the pass, long story short. But looking at the Bears specifically, they're 3-1 when they run the ball 25 or more times in a game. They're 6-2 when they rush at least 20 times, which has been kind of our magic number on the podcast for years, Nick. 20 seems to be that that Goldilocks zone for the Bears. 6-2 when they reach that. And when they run for less than 20 times in a game, they're 0-4 so far this season. So obviously, if the Bears can find a way to establish a run effectively and stick to it, they should find some success. And speaking of keeping at it, sticking to it, they need to do it in this game because the Cowboys, they allow the third most explosive plays on the ground in the NFL, and that's plays of rushes of 10 or more yards, the third most. And it doesn't happen, all the time, but teams run on them, they keep at it, they stick with it, and they're able to bust one or two for a pretty decent gain. So the Bears need to find a way to stick to it this week. Looking at Dallas and their defense specifically, Nick, and you're looking at the last couple of weeks, and they've been pretty much exploited on the ground. Is it probably, I know they're dealing with injuries, but the one to Vander Esch is probably the one that's hurting this defense a ton, right?
Yeah, he's a great player, just a guy that, does a lot of good things for their defense. And they do have Sean Lee, who's a veteran player, but he just is not the same type of player as a Vander Esch, and looks like he is labeled out. Is that correct for Thursday's game? So, again, it's a big loss, but they played without him last week. I thought Sean Lee filled in well, but he is in a Vander Esch, and they obviously drafted him in that first round to be that guy that kind of solidifies the middle of the defense. But that is a big blow to the Cowboys defense. And likewise for the Bears, they're missing Dane Trevathan. So both teams going through similar absences of not having that linebacker.
Yeah, and last week what we saw against the Lions was, not a, they just kind of kept at it. That's just going to be my theme. You saw Montgomery, saw a couple of short play games, but then he was able to bust one and bust two in some very key situations, which helped the Bears in their passing game, which we'll get to in just a moment. But first, a real quick timeout to let you know of our show sponsor, Wrigleyville Sports. Wrigleyville Sports is one of the premier Chicago sports merchandise stores in the city, and their goal is to bring the city of Chicago team gear happiness directly to the fans. So if you're looking for any of the latest Bears gear, they have it. From hats and sunglasses to t-shirts and jerseys, make sure to check out WrigleyvilleSports.com. And like I mentioned, they have quite the selection of some holiday merch, and they're getting more and more as we're now in December, like Bears ornaments, gift tags. So if you're looking to make a festive Chicago Bears themed Christmas, definitely check out WrigleyvilleSports.com, and we can get you 15% off and free shipping on your order. Use our promo code AUDIBLE, and again, that gets you 15% off and free shipping on any order of $25 or more. So you really can't beat this deal. Again, head over to WrigleyvilleSports.com, use that promo code AUDIBLE, AUDIBLE, and that gets you 15% off and free shipping on any order or more at WrigleyvilleSports.com. All right, Nick, let's go ahead and move over to the Bears passing game. Mitch Trubisky is coming off his third 3-touchdown game and his first 300-yard passing performance of the season, and we got a ton of production from guys like Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller in the process. Now, Dallas, they have the NFL's ninth best pass defense. They only allow 215 yards per game on average, but the defense hasn't been overly advantageous when it comes to generating turnovers. The Cowboys rank dead last in the NFL in interception percentage with only 4 interceptions on the year. And when you're looking at their pass rush, I would call it, pretty damn good. They average 2.7 sacks per game, which is, middle of the pack, but they're near top of the league in quarterback pressures. Now, this is one of those weeks where the Bears, I don't think, need to blow us out of the water, statistics-wise, through the year, but they just need to find a way to be effective. So, Nick, over to you. What are going to be some of your keys this week towards finding some of that success as needed through the year?
Yeah, well, so I was able to watch just that Bills and Cowboys game, and the one guy that kept sticking out for bad on that Cowboys defense was I think it's 27, Jordan Lewis, a guy that he's going to play that nickel corner. Cole Beasley absolutely tore him up in that game against on Thanksgiving. 6 receptions, 110 yards, and a touchdown. And according to Pro Football Focus, Jordan Lewis's coverage grade was 37.4, which is the worst that he's had all season. And this is something that's been kind of consistent with Lewis over the past 2 weeks at least. He, against New England, just a week prior to that, it was 48.9. So he hasn't been good in coverage, regardless if it's a bad weather game that was like in New England a couple weeks ago or indoors at Dallas. So this is a matchup that I absolutely love Anthony Miller to take advantage of. Because if Cole Beasley can just torch Jordan Lewis, imagine what Anthony Miller, coming off a career high in yards, just a career high in terms of just being in chemistry and in sync with Trubisky. This is the matchup where I think the Bears can absolutely exploit. We saw Matt Nagy actually go to that. And again, it was against Detroit with Coleman, one of the better nickel corners in the league from Seattle, which Detroit got in the offseason. If the Bears can exploit that matchup, and I think they can, because Anthony Miller's a better player than Cole Beasley, and Mitch Trubisky and Miller clearly have that chemistry, this is the one they have to take advantage of, and I really like this matchup coming into this game.
I like this. I want to get your opinion here. How Matt Nagy, after the game and this week, was talking about Miller's performance and wasn't really trying to talk it up so much. And yeah, he had good production, but there's still a lot that he needs to continue to work on. And we talked about Anthony Miller ever since he came out of college. Like, he has a big, he's a very big egotistical kind of guy. He plays with an edge. And I think this is smart of Nagy to kind of make sure, don't give Miller a big head or get him too confident or too complacent. That way he goes out there to continue to try to prove it each week, right?
I think Miller already has a big head. He's always very confident in himself, which is great. And I think just as of late, the play is backing it up as well. So it's great that Matt Nagy, I think he just expects even more from Anthony Miller. He still hasn't caught a touchdown yet this season, Will. So that's the next step. And I think this is just a matchup where if that pass rush for the Dallas Cowboys isn't as dominant as it was maybe earlier on in the season, this is where you take advantage of it. And Matt Nagy has shown just in a couple weeks now where he has found the weakness in a defense. You go back to, I forget the guy's name on the Giants who they kept targeting with Allen Robinson. The Bears took advantage of that matchup. They took advantage of Coleman with the Detroit Lions. This is the advantage. This is the matchup you have to take advantage of. And the Bears had the players to do just that. So I think you keep it level headed for Anthony Miller. He's going to go out there, do what he does, and get some good yards, get some good production.
Yeah, absolutely. And another cornerback in this team, I know as a team, Dallas is really good against the pass, but the cornerback, Awuzie, he's averaging 15 yards per catch on the year. He's averaging a pretty decent completion rate against. Only about 60% of the passes that are thrown his way are caught. But a guy like Allen Robinson who can win those contested catches, this is another matchup that I would be going towards as well. And most teams, when you're looking at Dallas, they're finding success against some of those linebackers. We mentioned Van Der Esch won't be playing. So Jalen Smith, who's a very good football player, you can find a way to get him in some space and get a running back on him and have him chasing. And I can see David Montgomery, Tariq Cohen being a good matchup in that regard. But Dallas, due to their ability to get a lot of pressure with their front four, and it's Rod Marinelli down there in Dallas, they're going to be running a lot of Tampa 2. So Trubisky's going to be seeing a lot of zone, and that's something that historically Trubisky has struggled against, is zone defenses and zone defenses that can get pressure with their front four. So this is going to be a big test, but do you think this is one where if they kind of keep up the same attitude they've had over the last couple of weeks of, picking their shots, being smart with the football, that this should be hopefully a minimal challenge?
It's going to be a great challenge actually when you look at it, because again, that is something that Mitch Trubisky really struggled with this season. And I think what can really help him, and what Josh Allen did a really good job of, is using his feet, whether it is when the pocket is collapsing, taking those yards that the defense is giving you. But there was this one play where it looks like Josh Allen is about to just break away and run outside the pocket and get yards with his legs, but he steps up towards the line of scrimmage. That brings up the linebackers. He finds Cole Beasley right behind him. The linebackers have to respect that as a running quarterback. You have to respect Mitch's legs. I know he hasn't done it a lot this season, but if Mitch can bring that element to it, you could break apart a zone defense just like that. So I'm expecting that if the Bears want to be successful in this one against the zone coverages and the aggressive defense that the Cowboys have, you need to get Mitch on the move. And we've seen what Matt Nagy has done with play action and just all of that Mitch Trubisky is a lot better when you get his legs involved.
Exactly. And I mean, that's the great thing about having a mobile quarterback. I mean, it's dangerous against man because everyone's back's turned to the quarterback, so that allows a lot of room for the QB to run. But like you mentioned, with the zone, it sucks them up. It takes them out of their zone. It takes them out of the area where they're supposed to protect. And if Trubisky can do that and bait some of these guys to step up, there should be some larger windows with some of these receivers crossing over the field and presenting themselves to Trubisky. So really good point there, Nick. So looking at the big picture here, I want to know, if you had to boil it down, Nick, what would be perhaps the one element of the Cowboys defense that worries you the most?
I think you talked about it earlier before we even went live. It's staying ahead of the chains, but it's really third down. Can the Bears really convert on the key down there? And I think the Bears did a really good job of just avoiding that down in general against the Detroit Lions on Thanksgiving, but with getting those big plays, Anthony Miller, Allen Robinson, things like that. But Dallas, they can get after the quarterback. And the biggest thing for me, can that Bears offensive line that does a pretty good job during pass protection, can they hold up against this front seven for the Dallas Cowboys? That's my biggest concern, because completely different. Dallas is a completely different team when that pass rush is effective, just like any defense. But really, when you get pressure on Trubisky, is he going to make that bad throw? But that's my biggest concern. Can this Bears offensive line with Cornelius Lucas at right tackle, guys like that, can they hold up against this front seven for the Cowboys?
Cool. I appreciate when you just take words out of my mouth. I mean, we do it all the time here on the show, but in this section in my notes, I have number one, worried about pressure in all caps. Robert Quinn versus Charles Leno Jr. Quinn has 10 sacks this year. Cornelius Lucas going up against DeMarcus Lawrence, who has 5 sacks this season. And you mentioned it, because when teams play zone, if the pass rush gets there and it gets there often, there's nowhere to throw that football. Trubisky has to make ultra-fast decisions, and we've seen that not really bode well for the Bears on offense. That's usually when the 3-and-outs start to happen. And you mentioned the third down defense. Cowboys are third in the NFL on third down at 32.45% allowed, and the Bears, of course, 29th in the NFL. They haven't been converting. They're one of the worst teams in terms of the amount of 3-and-outs this season. So really, the Bears need to find any way. I don't care if they run the ball. I want them to run the ball. But I don't care what they need to do, but don't get yourself in third and long. Keep it in third and less than 6. And we talked about it on Thanksgiving. They did a really good job against Detroit, staying out of third down altogether. Only 10 third downs that entire game they faced, and they're able to convert on 50% of those. But that's the Lions defense. This is the Cowboys defense that is much more sound on that money down. So this is a big key. Two big keys, and you took them right out of my mouth. Anything else either on Dallas's defense or the Bears on offense this week?
You know what? This is, I guess, really doesn't. It does have something to do with the game, but I went to Funk's Barbershop just yesterday, and I was talking to my barber, and he's really close with some of the guys that he cuts the hair for a lot of the Bears players. But he said he's going to talk to Matt Nagy, which is today, and tell him to put Cordero Patterson at tight end. I think that's something that you can maybe at least line him up there. I want to see a little bit more Cordero Patterson in this offense because when he's out there, it's usually as a decoy. You know the play's not going to him. He's been a great player on special teams, but it would be nice to see some production from Cordero Patterson actually in this offense. Kind of what we were all envisioning coming into the season, but just know if you see Cordero Patterson at tight end, you got to thank my barber at some point.
What an easy haircut that would be. I can do that one.
Yeah, seriously. It's not really much, but hey, he makes it look sharp on game days.
Now, I already mentioned third down, so I guess this is just the red zone section right now. The Bears on offense, middle of the pack, as they've been all year long, right there at 14th with a 59.38 touchdown percentage. And the Cowboys defense, Nick, they're 7th in the NFL, 47.62. So even when teams get down inside the 20, they tighten up just like they do on third down, and they make it difficult for offenses. So this is really, red zone execution, avoiding third down or succeeding on third down are going to be some really big challenges for the Bears. And to me, the keys to overcome it: 1, find a way to establish a run or at least make the run respectable. And then 2, like you mentioned, you need to have some patience against this zone defense, which all comes back to the pass protection as well. All right, it's time to find out who has the edge, and we're going to share the first one. Bears offensive line versus that Cowboys pass rush.
This is I think, man, this is a tough one because the Bears offensive line pass blocking has been a lot better, and we've seen also the running game kind of start to a little bit get going a little bit, but I have to give it to the Cowboys. They have some really good players on there. We didn't even mention Michael Bennett, a veteran who's also on that side of the line. I know he had like a yelling, shouting match just on Thanksgiving Day in the locker room there with the Cowboys, but I think they just have too many guys on that side, so I have to give it to Dallas.
Yeah, Dallas as well. Really good across the edge, some decent guys in the middle as well. Like I said, all season they've been very good at getting pressure with just 4. They don't often have to send a blitz, and to me, the ability to do that without sending the extra guys against this Bears offensive line that has been better, but they're still not overly great, is an easy one here to give over to the Cowboys. Nick, right back to you for that Bears passing game versus the Cowboys secondary.
I like this Bears passing attack against, look, we're taking out the Cowboys pass rush. We're just looking at the secondary players. I have to give it to the Bears and just what they were able to do to Detroit. You want to see that carry over. And like I said, I talked up Anthony Miller. I'm expecting a really big game out of him come Thursday. So I'm going to have to give it to this Bears passing attack.
Bears passing attack. I want to know real quick on that token, Taylor Gabriel still in concussion protocol. You okay with having more Wims out there this week, just like we saw on last Thursday?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Wims, whenever it seems like Wims is catching a ball, it's usually for a bigger kind of play. It's like not a 8-yard game. It's like a 10 to 15. It's in that, medium-sized range there. He just has to stay away from the illegal blocks in the back. He had 2 of them on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to talk about officiating on the podcast, but it's okay. It's okay. All right, let's go ahead and get into the X Factor here. Oh, wait, I have one more to go. And also, someone, Manny, on Periscope says that you're just not into the podcast as much anymore.
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
What do you mean? I don't even know what that means. I'm not into it, you guys. I didn't do all this prep for... Well, I did it for nothing, apparently.
Apparently so. One last edge here real quick. Bears ground game, Cowboys run defense. I think if the Bears stick with it, and I'm capitalizing stick here, they need to stay with it. I think they could run it effectively enough to call it a, quote, success. Dallas has a very good front. We've talked about it, but they've shown they can be pushed around a little bit. Noah Van Der Esch is going to help. Sean Lee is good, but he's a little bit older. He's dealing with a pec injury as well. So for me, if the Bears can find a way to reach that second level and get a hat on Jalen Smith, I think we're in business here. So I'm going to give it to the Bears and just by the slightest of edges. And now, finally, X Factor. And I'll go ahead and begin because mine's David Montgomery in a run game. Just mention how important it is. It's been kind of my theme throughout the beginning here of this preview. This is not a game where Mitch can drop back to throw 35, 45 times, and we're going to end up winning this ball game. There's just no way that's possible. So we have to find a way to establish a run. So for me, that's going to be David Montgomery and in general, the running attack. How about you?
I'm going with my guy that I've been talking about all day. It's going to be Anthony Miller. I think when we just don't want to see this be a one kind of game instance where he goes off and is productive for the Bears. This should be continuing, and we've seen it kind of continue for the past couple games, but I just really like the matchup in this one, Will. So I think when it comes down to when Trubisky has always looked to Allen Robinson to be that guy, I think this game, it's going to be Anthony Miller, especially over the middle. That's where the zone is usually softest between those two high safeties. Go there. He's going to be a security blanket for him all game.
I'm trying to think. I think it was this season. I think it was earlier on. You had a couple of rants about Anthony Miller, didn't you?
I sure did. I said that they didn't have chemistry in the beginning, which
they didn't, though. It's true.
They didn't, and now it looks like they got something there for sure.
All right, Manny now says that we're awesome. So you're back in the podcast, Nick. There you go.
Thank goodness.
All right, let's go ahead and turn our attention to the Bears defense. And let's see how they stack up against the Cowboys' top 10, top 5 offense, depending on where you're kind of splicing this thing up. And let's be consistent this week, and let's look at that Cowboys rushing attack. They ranked 9th in rushing attempts, 8th in total yards on the ground with 1,531, and 9th in yards per carry, averaging 4.1 yards per pop. And it's not just Ezekiel Elliott. Tony Pollard, he gets his fair share of touches as well. The two backs, they average over 100 yards combined per game. I will say most of their production came earlier in the season, and they haven't been in their same groove since their bye week just about a month ago. Bears defense are allowing 108 yards per game on the ground over their last 3, a respectable number, but not as dominant as they once were here. And we have one more week until Akeem Hicks comes back, and then we can probably see that number get back to where we envision it and where we expect it. But Nick, what's your confidence in the Bears defense to stop Zeke and company on Thursday night?
It's going to be a tall task and one that's going to take all 11 guys, especially on that defense. But it does get a little easier because according to Todd Archer, ESPN writer for the Cowboys, Tony Pollard actually didn't practice because he suffered an ankle injury, and the game status for Thursday is up in the air whether or not he's going to play. And like you said, he does get some of those carries there in Dallas. It's not just all Zeke, even though he's the highest paid running back. But that is a big blow because I think Tony Pollard, it was a guy that I was looking at for possibly the Bears to draft. He's a guy that can catch the ball in the backfield, but it's going to take all 11 guys. If you're out of your lane for one split second, Ezekiel Elliott's one of those kind of backs that will exploit it. And it's really because that offensive line for the Cowboys, they do such a good job, Will, of when they're on the move and getting to certain spots, that zone blocking, they really have almost perfected it. That's why Ezekiel Elliott's able to have the yardage. That's why he's paid to be one of the highest paid running back, because he has an offensive line that could block for him, and he knows how to hit the holes when they're open.
Now, do you want to know why I have a little bit of confidence, though, on top of Pollard being out?
Why is that?
All right, well, Elliott's most productive this season when he's rushing towards the right side, especially off tackle. And over there, it's over 5 yards per carry this season. Who usually is on that side, on that edge?
God, maybe is it Mack?
No, it's Isaiah Irving. No, it's Khalil Mack.
Oh, God.
That
makes it difficult to run.
Yeah, I mean, Mack being there, I mean, if that's where their bread and butter plays are, right where Mack's at, Mack doesn't have to make the tackle. He's just going to eat up multiple blockers and allow Roquan Smith and Nick Kwiatkowski, a Kyle Fuller, and Eddie Jackson, a HaHa Clinton Dix, who have you to run in, fill that gap, and make that tackle. So for me, again, the Bears should be forcing the Cowboys to try to beat them another way that isn't their strength. And this is something they've gone to all season long, so it really should help slow down that rushing attack just a bit. So just a small little tippet there that really should go a long way for the Bears in this one, finding a way to move them from the right side over to the left where their production takes a decent dip, and in between the tackles is hit and miss per most running backs. But this is a game where you do wish you have Akeem Hicks up in the middle here to really take care of business, but the Bears should overall find a way to at least limit Ezekiel Elliott. What kind of game, and again, I know game flow and how the scoring goes matters, but what kind of game would you live with from Zeke this game? Like, obviously he could have 100 yards but still not, reach the end zone, but what kind of game would you live with at like maybe worst case scenario?
I think the thing is with the Cowboys, if Zeke gets going, that play action pass is just so much more effective for Dak Prescott. Guys have to cheat in and kind of come up, and those safeties are probably going to be playing in the box a lot this game to try and stop this run. But what can I live with? I could live with Zeke not being very effective this game. I think that's the best way the Bears are going to, get out of Soldier Field with a victory, because I think if he gets going, this Dallas offense really does have a lot of weapons, and they have the most yards in the NFL. Total offense, they're number one, but they just are not the same team when it comes to the red zone. I know you probably have the stats on that, Will, but it's just you can't allow Zeke to get going. So I think for me personally, they need to not shut him down. That's a tough task to do, but they need to limit the big runs, the big plays, not allow these offensive linemen to get to Nick Witkowski and Roquan Smith, because if that happens, holes are going to widen up, Zeke's going to have running lanes, and it's going to be really tough to stop this offense.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned red zone, so I'll throw the stat out here real quick. Like you said, they have the most yards in the NFL, but once they reach inside the 20, they tend to stall. They're 17th in the NFL in terms of scoring touchdowns in the red zone. Only 54% of those possessions end up in 6 points. And they've also had, and we'll talk about the third phase in a bit, but they also have some kicking problems that don't even make those chances, field goals half the time. So that's boding well for the Bears. And this Bears defense that does a lot of bending, not breaking, that might just play right into our favor, where Dallas can get a decent amount of yards, but this Bears defense at the end of the day won't break. And hopefully that's the case here. But let's move over to the Dallas passing attack. And don't look now, but they do rank first in yards this season. They're the only team in the NFL that averages over 300 yards per game through the air. That's at 305. Dak Prescott, he's been throwing well all season long. Amari Cooper, his go-to guy. Obviously, he's a threat. Then you have Michael Gallup, who's really shown out this year. Tight end Jason Witten coming out of retirement, still being very productive. And then, of course, Zeke Elliott, a very vital factor in this passing game as well. But even with all the success, one glaring weakness that I see on top of the red zone stalling has been the turnovers for Dak Prescott. He has his sixth most interceptions with 11 thrown this year. So, Nick, what must the Bears defense do to hold Dak in check?
You know what the Bills did a really good job of is just disguising some of those blitzes they sent at Dak. There was one where it was a 2nd and 10 play. It was a double B gap blitz, but the safety blitzing was a little bit delayed, and that threw Dak completely off. They had a screenplay set up. You would think that would work, but Dak just holds onto the ball a little bit too long. A defensive lineman ends up picking him off. But I guess it's going to be really trying to confuse Dak pre-snap and then bring something that he's just not expecting. Really, in that game against the Bills, Dak should have been picked off realistically 3 times total, but the Bills had 2 bad penalties on 2 interceptions that Dak threw, and I don't think those penalties affect the play. So, like you mentioned, he's turnover prone. He will give you the ball, and this Bears defense, they're still looking to kind of get into the turnover aspect of becoming the defense we all know and remember of last season. So this would be a great opportunity at home to kind of get that going, because Dak Prescott is a guy who's prone to giving the football away.
Yeah, he is. And it happens with a lot of pressure as well. I was looking at the pressure, and at first I was like, geez, this is an elite offensive line. And not to say they're not really good, but I wouldn't classify them as elite here. Prescott, he's been pressured on a pretty average rate, 34% of his throws, which is like middle of the pack. But I noticed that they were sacked, I think, the least in the NFL, only at 3.5% of all of his throws. So when I saw that 3.5%, I was like, damn, we're in trouble, because we know with this Bears pass rush, it's been kind of MIA and very inconsistent this season. But then I saw that he gets pressured, an average rate, so I have a little bit more confidence. And then when I saw that his pass rating drops to a 73 when he's under pressure, got me a little bit more confident. And then when I saw that 6 of his 11 interceptions this season have came when he's under pressure, kind of helped me a little bit more. So a big key here towards stopping Dak Prescott is getting pressure and forcing him to make those tough decisions. And like you mentioned, he's going to give some of that Bears defense, who needs to find a way to get these turnovers that they just haven't been here this season. The Bears should have a couple of chances to get some of those takeaways in this game. All right, so I mentioned a minute ago, and you've mentioned it, everyone knows it, they have a lot of playmakers on this offense. So looking at all those playmakers, any matchups worry you the most? And I say that knowing it has to be Amari Cooper, right?
It has to be, and I think a big thing for this game, Will, is the status of Prince Mukamura, who's looking
Hmm.
like more and more that he's going to be out this game. And I was listening to ESPN 1000 coming back from work today, and Jeff Dickerson, the Bears ESPN reporter, was saying that most likely it's going to be Buster Screen moving outside and Tolliver to the inside, which was I made sure I heard that right. But that if that's the case, look, Buster Screen has been a really good nickel corner for the Bears all season. I really liked how he's played, but Amari Cooper and on Buster Screen, or that is a matchup that I don't like. And if that comes to fruition come Thursday, that's something that the Bears have to be mindful of. I don't know if you can go as much single high safety just because you need to have those two deep threats. And Gallup's a guy that can make big plays as well. That's a huge loss for the Bears. And I know Prince did not have a good game on Thanksgiving. He gave up two of those touchdowns. Well, we still don't know what the first one was with the coverage breakdown, but you don't want to have that happen. I'm still kind of curious to see if that will be Kevin Tolliver moving to the outside and keeping Screen at his natural nickel position. But that's huge for the Bears because the Cowboys have weapons. They can score. They can move the ball. We all know the red zone kind of difficulties there. But if that's the case, watch out. Let's see what these Cowboys can actually do on offense because Buster Screen way better at the nickel than he is going to be on the outside.
Huh. I'm just thinking
Yeah,
that through. It doesn't make sense. Why would you take a guy out of where he's been succeeding and then throw Kevin Tolliver, who's inexperienced, into a new position because he primarily plays outside corner? In all of training camp, I never saw the dude
yep.
line up in the nickel one time.
No, that's what I was thinking too as I'm listening to Jeff Dickerson. And look, he's been on the podcast before. He knows his stuff. But when he said that, I'm like, oh, that's a problem because I don't
Mm-hmm.
want Kevin Tolliver. Tolliver doesn't have the mobility movement to really function in that nickel
No, he
spot.
needs the help at the boundary. He needs the help to be like an extra defender for him. If he's tasked in the slot, we're in trouble.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. So we'll see if that actually happens come Thursday, and we'll see if Prince can recover from that hamstring. But that is a key matchup on going to this game on Thursday night.
And regardless of who's on Cooper, if the Bears play some man coverage here, that's a tough matchup because Cooper's such a great route runner. He can stop on a dime. And Dallas, they've been finding a lot of success with him on slants, comebacks, curls, anything that involves quick breaks. He's able to get some immediate separation. And even if a defender's on him, he has, the great knack of coming down with a lot of those contested balls. But yeah, I mean, Mari Cooper is the big obvious guy here. I think Jason Witten doesn't really bother me. I think he'll get his looks, he'll get some yards, but guys like a Nikolkowski, a HaHa Clinton Dix, a Roquan Smith from time to time, I mean, that should be fine, right?
Yeah, so the only thing with Jason Wayne, obviously doesn't have the speed that he once had, or he's older. He's an old guy, but he's savvy though. Well, on just in that Bills game, he sells like he's blocking just on a typical run play, but he releases out, the linebacker completely forgets about him. It's an easy completion over the middle. That's what Nick Kwiatkowski, Roquan Smith, obviously being some of the younger players still, they need to be wary of a Jason Witten and all these little savvy veteran moves that they like to put on people. But like something as simple as faking the run blocking, then going out for a simple pass, the linebackers for the Bears have to be aware of that because it worked against the Bills just last Thursday.
I was going to say it was the Bills, and this is the Bears defense, but the Bills have been
They're
decent
pretty
this season.
solid.
Yeah. All right, moving forward here, looking down. Oh, do you have anything else on Dallas on offense or the Bears on defense this week?
No, I think that's a big thing. Just the Prince of Mukamura's status, who's going to be playing outside corner. But I think just to hit on this again, the offensive linemen for the Cowboys love to get out in space, whether it's screens, zone blocking. They love to pull their guards. If they are able to get in the right spots on this Bears defense, they're not stopping Ezekiel Elliott. I'll tell you that right now. They know how to move as a unit, know where they need to be, and that's going to be huge coming into this game. Whether the Bears can just disrupt them a little bit to stop Ezekiel Elliott from getting those rushing lanes, but that's going to be a huge thing as well to keep mindful of.
The only other one I have, and I'm sure that you and I are just suffering from a small case of amnesia ever since he left the division, but don't sleep on Randall Cobb, who's always had the Bears number his entire career. I don't like talking about him, and I'm glad that we don't really see him as often as we once have. But someone else that could be a big player this week, and You mentioned it. If you put a Kevin Tolliver in a slot and he's on Cobb, that seems like a terrible, terrible idea. I'd rather have Buster in that position. I think he would do a much more efficient job in covering down Randall Cobb there. But looking at red zone and third down, I already mentioned red zone, so we're already good there. Again, just in case you forgot, the Cowboys are 17th on offense scoring in the red zone, with the Bears on defense are 13th. And on third down, the Bears defense, 7th best in the NFL, only allowing teams to convert on about 34.6%. And the Cowboys offense, and this is a big reason why they're able to move the ball so effectively, they have the best third down offense in the NFL, moving the chains on 48.98% of all third downs. And it really is a combination of great running and getting yourself in third and manageable situations, and of course execution on those plays as well. So for the Bears, getting the Cowboys stopped on third down will be a challenge, but if any defense can do it, the Bears defense is definitely one of them. All right, time to find out who has the edge. I got the Bears pass rush versus that Cowboys offensive line, and this one's tough. I mentioned it. I'm kind of torn because they don't allow a ton of sacks. Again, only getting sacked on 3.5% of throws, which is the NFL's best by a decent amount. But again, they also allow a all right amount of pressure, and so that's going to help. But it really depends on what I'm going to call a success. I'm going to give the edge to the Cowboys here just because we've seen this pass rush disappear, and I don't envision sacking Prescott a lot, but I do hope the pressure, even if it's not with the front four, if you bring in a Roquan Smith, a Nick Kwiatkowski, a Buster Screen from time to time, and Eddie Jackson, just to throw different looks at him to speed up that clock, that would be a great step. But just pure offensive line versus that Bears front four, I'm going to have to give the edge here to the Cowboys. Over to you, Nick, for the Bears run defense versus that Cowboys ground game.
You know what? This is going to be, I think, the matchup that makes or breaks, and whoever wins this game will win this matchup. But I really like how Eddie Goldman's been playing, and also Nick Williams on the interior for that Bears defensive line. And it's going to be their job to really disrupt any of the timing plays that the Cowboys have in terms of getting their run blocking set up. So I know that the Cowboys have a good offensive line. I know the Bears haven't been as good, but if the Bears need this victory, so they need to stop the run. I'm going with the Bears in this one.
All right, and of course, for us real quick, we got the Bears secondary versus that Cowboys passing attack, and we don't even know what's going to be a come of the Prince Amukamara injury and how that's going to impact the secondary. So where does that kind of put you?
Yeah, I'm like, it's the toss-up right now. I think because the Cowboys are going to move the ball, you guys. I think that much is known. But if Buster Screen has to be out of position, you bring in an inexperienced player in Kevin Tolliver, that really makes life difficult for the Bears secondary. So I will give it to the Cowboys. I think they have the weapons to really move the ball. But when it comes down to it, it's all going to be about stopping the run.
I think if we're fully healthy here and we had Prince, as much as we've been griping on him and he hasn't been playing to the same level that he did a season ago, I think I would have given the Bears a slight edge, but just because we don't know what's going to be happening with Tolliver and Screen and Prince, and it's all very fluid, which makes me wonder what they're doing in practice and if it's actually effective practices, because these are walkthroughs. And if you're having this position switch on a short week with walkthroughs, I just don't know. It doesn't sit right with me. So I'm going to go ahead and give this edge to the Cowboys as well. But Nick, who's going to be your X factor on defense?
X factor, I'm going to go with Eddie Goldman. I think this is a guy, again, not talked about as much, of course, on this Bears defense, but he's going to be huge in stopping this Cowboys rushing attack. And he was getting after David Blau in that game against Detroit on Thanksgiving. So it's a guy that he could do a lot for this Bears defense, and he's going to have to be huge come Thursday night if the Bears want to come out with a victory.
Yeah, no, really good stuff there for me. I think we'll win with Roquan Smith. He's going to need to be all over to stop Zeke, not just against the run, but also against the pass where he's very effective, blowing up some of these screens, getting to the edge. These are going to be some big keys for the Bears this week, but I say that, but now that we're talking through this show, I'm thinking about when I abandon my notes, and it's going to be Buster Screen, Prince, or Kevin Tolliver, whoever's over there, and however that shakes out, to me, could very well be a deciding factor in this game and very much an X factor as well. But before we dive in, up next is going to be our weekly predictions. But real quickly, let's discuss the third phase. And Nick, I believe you have some interesting facts on a not kicking battle between the two teams, but just some kicking woes that we're both having.
Yeah, so just to sum it up, the Bears and Cowboys are bad. Are bad teams when it comes to field goals. Just reading an article on the Athletic, Brett Maher is the 35th ranked kicker out of 37 from the 30 to 50 yard range. That's great for the Bears, but the only thing, Eddie Pinheiro is actually ranked 37th out of field goal kickers, 37 in that 30 to 50 yard range. Guys, Cody Parkey is ranked two spots ahead of Maher. So that's showing you all the bad things that are happening on special teams in terms of what these two field goal kickers are bringing to this game on Thursday. And Brett Maher was a guy that missed 2 field goals indoors at Dallas. They should have no faith in him when it comes to kicking a field goal at Soldier Field, and the Bears should have no faith in Eddie Pinheiro when it comes to kicking at Soldier Field as well. So, and if it comes down to a kick, I don't know what's going to happen. I would maybe bet who's more likely to hit a field goal post than to actually make a kick.
Oh, gee. So for me, I'm looking at returning stats here for the Cowboys, and they've been, in that regard, they're allowing 10 yards per punt return. So if Tariq Cohen finds his compass and knows where north is, should be in good shape there. And then they average about 24, 25 yards per kick return on average. So I have a good feeling that if Cordero Patterson can get his hands on a few of these kickoff returns, hopefully just one, and it's just at either the first or the first thing at halftime. But yeah, I think if we have a couple opportunities, he could have the chance of busting out a big one. I mentioned it a week ago against the Lions. Feel around the same kind of thing here against the Cowboys. But let's go ahead, enter the final segment of our show. And like always, Nick, it's time to begin with our bold prediction. So what's going to be your Bears-Cowboys bold prediction?
Bold prediction is that Anthony Miller finally gets in the end zone, not once, but twice, all in coverage with Jordan Lewis there. I expect it to actually be over the middle too, so that's exactly where I expect Anthony Miller to attack this Cowboys defense, but he'll have 2 touchdowns the first of this season.
Nice. And, against a Tampa 2 scheme, if you can bust the seam and get behind the linebackers and in front of the safeties, I think Anthony Miller can definitely eat up this defense in that regard. My bold prediction, Bears are going to force 3 turnovers on defense, and they'll take one of those to the house. And if that's the case, we should be in pretty damn good shape as well. But hopefully that one comes true as well. If both of ours come true, Nick, we can hop in this post-game show. We can crack open a couple bottles, celebrate another week of staying alive, but we'll get there. We'll see how that turns out. But who's going to be your MVP prediction?
I've been talking about him all podcast. It's Anthony Miller, but really it's going to be a combo. It's going to be a combo. Mitch Trubisky has to make the throws there. I want to see that chemistry continue. I'm on the hype train for those two guys because we expected so much out of those two coming into 2019. But really, when you look at it, it's going to be Anthony Miller getting that yak, those yards after the catch, just exploiting the middle area, right in, like you just mentioned it, Will, right in front of the safeties, behind the linebacker. That's where I expect Anthony Miller just do work. But when it comes down to it, I think he'll be the MVP of this one.
Look at you. You're hopping on my train. I like it. I've been rolling with these, so I'm very excited to say that my MVP prediction is going to be Mitch Trubisky. Again, he doesn't need to have a world beater type of game. I don't expect him to, but what I need to see out of Mitch and what I think he's going to provide us is clutch throws on third down. He's going to take care of the football, and we're going to see some confidence in and out of the pocket. He's going to not move around with a lot of bad urgency. So he's not going to move around with panic, but just like that good urgency of he needs to make a play. Again, this is not a game where we need to see Mitch throw for 303 touchdowns. This could be a game where he throws for less than 200, and that's exactly what the Bears need in order to win. And that's what I expect. So for me, Trubisky's going to play an efficient game. One, he takes care of the football, doesn't give Dallas any extra possessions, picks his spots, helps the Bears be as successful as possible on third down, and that's why he'll be our MVP here in just 2 short days. Nick, are you ready to tell me who you have winning this game?
Yeah, I think at this point, I'm riding this train. We're going to see where this Bears team goes. Obviously, the playoffs are still very slim, but they need to win this one. I think they do. I have the Bears winning, and I think it's going to be a close one, not as high scoring as the 24-20 affair that happened last Thursday, but I think it will be 17-14 Bears. They squeak out with a victory and go to 7-6.
Cool. Same thing as you. I'm riding this. I think one game at a time. I was watching the Cowboys and the Bills after we did our post-game show, and the one thing that just kept coming to me was the Cowboys are beatable. The Cowboys are beatable, and I believe the Bears, they play up to their opponent or down. I don't know which way this one's going. They're both 6-6 teams, so maybe they play even. But I have them winning too, 17-13.
Very similar. So, I mean, obviously both teams absolutely they need this.
Mm-hmm.
They need this. So, I think it's going to be a very hard-fought matchup. It's going to come down, I think, to the last couple minutes in the fourth quarter, but the Bears are at home. Dallas, just with them, they have all the playmakers they can have. It's just I don't know mentally if this team is capable of battling adversity and pulling out a victory like some of the Bears. I mean, look, the season hasn't gone like we thought it would, but the Bears have shown some fight in some of these games, even though their offense has been, really bad this season. So when you put all those factors into it, I think the Bears do come out with a victory come Thursday.
How confident? What are you going to put that number at?
I'm going to put it at a 6.5. The Bears will come away with this victory.
There we go. I'm sitting here at a 5.77. I wasn't really specific for this game, but with playoff hope still alive, and again, you said it, it's a slim chance. It's a long shot, but the Bears are going to give it their all in this game. They're going to fight to the finish. They're trending over the last month in the right direction. They've won 3 of their last 4. And the Cowboys are going the opposite. They've lost 3 of their last 4. So with Dallas being, beatable, it's still going to be a test, but this is a game where the Bears can win. All they need to do, protect the football, stick to the run, allow it to open up Trubisky through the air, and have that defense hold Dallas, find a key turnover here or there, and we should be able to talk about a Bears victory. As the Cowboys have been finding ways to beat themselves. We know the Bears have had a stretch where they did the same exact thing this season. It's going to take both determination, it's going to take some discipline to win this game, and I believe the Bears are going to be on that right state of mind. And don't forget, Nick, the Cowboys are playing in the cold. They don't like the cold. They're outside practicing in long sleeves in the 60-degree weather of Dallas. So if the Bears can go out there, smack them in the mouth early in that cold at night in Chicago, I think that can go a long way. And I work remote. My boss, he lives in Dallas. And I said, hey, you should fly up and let's go to this game. And he's like, it's too cold for me. He's like, this is why I live in Dallas. He's like, that's way too cold. And I was like, this is going to be a real factor in this game. So, again, I really think that could be a factor, and the Bears should find a way to win. So, even though I'm only at a little bit less than 6, just because I never know which team's going to show up. But as I sit here today, if the Bears play to the level we know they're capable of, they should find a way to win, Nick. They really should.
Yeah, absolutely. They play like they do the offense come like that third quarter. Consistently, that's a whole different Bears team. So I think you put it all together, not have the coverage breakdowns that we've kind of been seeing, especially with a good offense like Dallas. That's going to be huge as well. But yeah, it's going to be playoff atmosphere come Thursday night at Soldier Field, and I know that place is going to be rocking. So we'll just see, how the Bears respond. Both teams need this, and it's a huge NFC matchup.
Speaking of a playoff atmosphere, real quickly, you and I, we're going to a game, Bears, Chiefs here in just a couple of weeks. And, if the Bears win on Thursday, they beat the Packers, that's going to be a huge primetime game against the Chiefs. And we have one spare ticket, and we still have 1 week and a half, so 9 days until we give away that ticket via our raffle. So if you want to join Nick and I for that Bears-Chiefs game, head over to chicagoaudible.com/raffle. Again, on next week's game preview episode, we will be picking a winner to join us at that game. Section 117, row 12. You're only 12 rows from the field. It's going to be a great time. We want you to join us, so definitely do so, because like Nick said, this game's going to be a playoff atmosphere. You better believe against the Packers, things are going to be up there. And then if that all comes to fruition, Bears, Chiefs, Nagy, Trubisky, Mahomes, Andy Reid, it should be a lot of fun, and we want you to join us in on the action. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope that you all enjoyed this game preview. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. Stick around for Will Ingles' 5 matchups to watch. And the next time that you hear from Nick and I will be as soon as that final whistle blows on Thursday night. But until then, bear down, Chicago.